eagerly waiting to hear from our very competent panel about quantum, about regulatory aspects, about the user side of quantum technologies and quantum encryption. Now, can everybody hear me? Just a quick check.
Good for me.
Okay,
yeah, we can hear you.
Well, I'm not going to re-explain what I said earlier. I just want to get a first roundup and a first reaction from you gentlemen about that little crisis scenario and the saving the cats from crypto wars text and lines of thinking, lines of problems which you were provided with. Anyone to start? I think Jean-Christophe had started when we had to interrupt, so I pass it back to you. Hello.
So you want me to jump in the middle in the meanwhile?
Yes.
So, was that
okay.
You hear me?
Okay, now I'm back.
Go ahead.
Okay, let me start just
Go
so
ahead,
that
Bruno.
people don't...
We discussed
Yes,
before,
okay.
so.
Yeah, we'll discuss later. Okay, so the problem we have here is, first of all, we need to ascertain if the threat is correct or not. I mean, to build a quantum computer or to build a computer which is like a quantum computer, we don't know what they did. We need really to understand if this is correct or not. And that's really technically, that's the first thing we need to know. If they have a quantum computer, I think all on this panel would agree that we're basically too late. I mean, we should have transferred to post-quantum on the quantum safe stuff earlier. And if we didn't, now we have a big problem because we have now somebody who is able to select. Maybe they have a small quantum computer which can do, you know, break one thing at a time, but will not damage everything together. So they can actually select exactly what they want to eavesdrop on or what they want to break and just do it. And there is very little we can do before we have increased our lines of defenses, which consist of two possibilities. One is post-quantum algorithm on one side, which would resist this computer. And the second is to have maybe a quantum key distribution infrastructure, like the one the European Union is actually trying to build with the quantum communication infrastructure projects. Mm-hmm. So it's too late, but we can start to do things in order to prevent that in the future, or maybe improve things. Maybe Joachim.
So if I can jump in on
yes.
that as well. I think there is things we could do right now, and there's not much choice. I think in the end of the day, it comes back to the assets that you want to protect, right? So I think what an organization would need to understand right now, what is the data or the assets that are at risk, right? Do we at least have an understanding of what we consider secret or most valuable? And then try to make what we can do to maybe take assets offline or to isolate them to the extent possible. That is, of course, a very quick response, but just to say that's something you would need to do. As Bruno mentioned, the time to transition to a new type of crypto, we won't have that now, but we would need to at least have an understanding what are the assets that are at risk, right?
Yes, exactly. And I think beyond that, just to catch on to that, what you said, Bruno and Joachim, obviously, you alluded to it, Joachim, there's also a question of awareness here. I mean, you need first to know what is happening in your organization. And I think if you look at it, still a lot of people send out emails on HTML without even an S-MIME or anything like that, encryption. So, I mean, there is a lot of homework organizations have to do internally in identifying the critical assets, the critical data and the critical information, and then move on to a solution or an anti-threat barrier. Any reaction from Alan or from Jean-Christophe?
Yeah. Hello. It's like hello.
I can see you, Alan, but I cannot hear you.
Yeah, I don't have
If you hear me well, I think at this point there will be a discussion between Joachim and me. Can you hear us well?
Bruno,
yes,
I can hear you
I can hear you perfectly well. Bruno and Joachim, I can hear you perfectly well.
Okay. So I think we can continue this discussion, but of course, Alan and Jean-Christophe, if you can talk, it would be much better. It's just if we cannot hear you, well, I mean, I cannot solve this technical problem. Quantum is not. We can teleport you maybe and see what we could do with that, but that will take a few more years. I think I totally agree with you.
Let's try time travel. I'm picking on what you say, Bruno. Let's time travel them over here.
Yeah, that's another story. Time travel is more linked to to relativity than to quantum, but you know, physics is enabling a lot of very interesting things. We cannot do time travel right now, but anyway.
Yes.
So no, I totally agree with Joachim. The main thing is to understand what you need to protect, and it's totally true that people still don't use current encryption tools. However, quantum threat is of a totally different nature, which means that even if you are using the right tools, if you don't go to post-quantum or QKD or quantum networks, it will not help you so much. So yes, we need to move now as soon as possible to use the classical tools. If there is a real quantum threat, as this discussion is about, then it will not help us so much.
But and how do you see the user side on the one side, or let's maybe dig a little more into the user side on the one side, but also on the regulatory side. You know that the term crypto wars is again out in the press and out in people's minds. Are we really moving in favor on the regulatory side of end-to-end encryption based on quantum, or are we moving away from it for reasons which are pursuit of crimes, etc., etc.?
I think it would be ideal if Jean-Christophe could comment on that, if that works.
Agreed.
Right.
Could you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello. I'm talking. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There's just some delay. Go ahead.
The scenario you describe, the scenario, there is a 4 seconds something. So no, since the scenario is unfortunately quite timely and accurate. I mean, we do see at the moment this struggle and this increasing concern between how do we protect ourselves from criminals and terrorism, and also there is a spike into the consumption of child abuse materials. So this happens, and encryption is a way to evade enforcement and attacks. At the same time, there is a growing concern that, okay, how can we protect our privacy? And so this balance between privacy and security is really timely. So I was discussing with a digital rights association, and he was telling me, look, we are starting Crypto Wars 3.0. And to some extent, it is true. What it means there is that, and that for me, it's a very good thing. I'm not a technical person. I am a lawyer, a public affairs person, and I'm working to help the industry to working on encryption to have their solution adopted by everybody, companies and people. And so what the good thing we see, and this is happening now. So if the attack is happening now, we are in troubles. But the good thing is, in real life, in 2020, November 18, there is an unprecedented interest for discussing encryption. So of course, people are in favor or against. The Commission is, at the moment, the European Commission is itself struggling with finding the right balance. And it's very positive to see that what used to be a super technical and I would say cryptic topic is now gradually, more and more coming to the general public and to the news. And for us, for the encryption industry that I represent, having public discussion and having public scrutiny is going to help. So how can we resist this attack? Right now in this scenario is difficult, but it's time to react. So basically, everything which is in the scenario is, I mean, accurate and discussed now, and the Commission is in this process. So back to the technical issue, how can we resist attacks? And then I would, I would then later comment on the how are we going to address this in the coming months. But in this scenario, we have only a few days left.
Yes. Do we have Alan? Because I would definitely like to hear Alan on this one. Still not with us. Still teleported over here. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry.
Sound is bad, Alan. The sound is very bad, Alan. Let me ask another question to the panel, and meanwhile we may get Alan back with us. To what extent is the discussion which we are having today, and might be an easy question or a difficult one, to what extent is that discussion different from the discussion which we had a long time ago when PGP was out? Because we already had that discussion as to whether cryptography should be widely available to everybody, etc., etc., etc. So to what extent are we discussing a different subject today?
So in my opinion, if I can jump in here, if we talk about end-to-end encryption, which indeed with PGP you can implement, I think the difference is when this initially came out, there was no adoption whatsoever of an end-to-end encryption, and it took a long time for PGP to even be used, and I think even today it's not many people are really using it. But what happened in the meantime is that big services in the telco space, so such as WhatsApp and others, actually implemented this for the user. So you don't, as a user, don't need to do anything about it anymore. So end-to-end encryption has become omnipresent in many applications that we use without the user even needing to trouble about this or needing to do anything. And to that extent, if now, of course, again, coming back to the recent discussion there on the EU side, there is now the interest to disable end-to-end encryption and then basically putting a vulnerability in there that allows people to intercept that communication. That is now a new thing, because we have implemented end-to-end encryption for a wide user base, and now we want to step back from that. And this is why I think the discussion is different to the beginning of PGP and similar types of technologies. I don't know if Jean-Christophe or others want to comment on that.
I would like to add something here, is that I think we are focusing now on encryption, but with the kind of attack we see, I think encryption is probably the least of our problems. It's one thing to worry that whatever I send on the internet today can be eavesdropped and that somebody will know what I'm saying. But it's much, much worse when you have an attack like that, which actually can threaten the whole communication structure. It means that somebody can take control of elements which are now on the network, open a dam somewhere, change the power, destroy power plants and things like that. I think that's, if there is a quantum computer which can attack these things, the first thing is to get back and make our infrastructure resilient. And I would say that the confidentiality of our data is very important, but in terms of the damage of this attack, I think it's less. So if there is a strong attack like this, the first thing is to make sure that our global infrastructure somehow withstands that. And I don't know how we can do that easily. So not focus too much on encryption. Again, we're in this scenario where somebody can basically do everything they want with our network. Not only listen to it, but actually change it. Change the comments on everything.
Yes, well, there's one approach which has been taken about a year ago in the United States, where a law was passed which obliges power distribution companies to be able to go off-net and then basically do the entire resetting of their infrastructure manually. So would that be an approach? It's a very basic one. To a certain extent, it's not even an analog approach to a digital problem. But would that be a way of generalizing, knowing that this is not possible everywhere?
I think this is what Joachim
if I may comment on this, if you hear me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm back. Sorry for the technical glitches. Yes, I think asking basically that question is an absolutely valid question. I think Bruno actually hit a very good point that critical infrastructure is let's say, probably the most important worry to have, or the most, let's say, likely target if you talk about cyber terrorism as such. It's not probably about the data. It's about making life, making countries, making industry stopping as a result of the cyber attack. And I think we are state of technology development today that running the critical infrastructure in the manual mode, I think it works in a very limited scope. I think it's kind of probably last resort, and I don't believe today this is something that is feasible in order to, let's say, continue providing the reliable service on the utilities, being water, electricity, or whatever other utilities we depend on. As a result of that, I think we have to take kind of like learning from this attack, in the sense that preparedness and making networks more resilient to that attack by applying proper level of encryption, and definitely, let's say, quantum key distribution being the one that can help, let's say, further enhance the resiliencies of networks and critical infrastructure are probably the way to go in the future, is something that can be done or has to be done at the multiple levels. And saying multiple levels, it starts probably not at the level of individual, but has to be done on the more fundamentally, let's say, infrastructural level, starting from the, let's say, governments and the probably supra-governments organization like European Commission, in which this should be, and it is today, as we know, priority to make sure that those infrastructure and those elements that can protect them, including the quantum communication infrastructure, are available and will be available in the future to prevent this and make let's say, data and critical infrastructure sufficiently protected from those attacks.
Any other reaction to that point? Jean-Christophe?
You hear me?
Yes.
So yes, I would like to come back to also to the point made by Joachim and the question on PGP and what is the difference today. And yes, the big difference, and it's recent, it's about a year ago, is that encryption is massively adopted by global companies, like and WhatsApp was mentioned, and this makes a big difference. Now, Facebook Messenger wants to also implement encryption. At the same time, after the Snowden revelations, we know that kind of massive surveillance is a reality. And on top of this, well, it's not, I would say, not as extreme as people may think, but still it's kind of scary the way it has been done already. And you had a new phenomenon which has been there for 10 years, but no one noticed, no one discussed this, which is that a number of big platforms have been looking for detecting illegal material in people's communication, and namely child sexual abuse material. And this is today a very big source of information and intelligence against pedophiles and people viewing this type of video, which we know, and you watch kind of child abuse material over time, and some people do, I mean, turn to reality and abuse children themselves. So, and these days, as we talk, the European Commission does not know, and the European Union does not know how to handle this. But we should stop this, and there is an e-privacy regulation being discussed. Should we put this on hold? Should we continue, and so on? And so it seems that discussions should have taken place 10 years ago, but they are only happening now, and there is a lot of confusion, and because also, I mean, people do not talk. I mean, association dealing with digital rights, companies providing encryption, law enforcement agencies, and even beyond the intelligence agencies are not used to talk and with each other. And I would say it's even worse at the national level of the member states of the EU and elsewhere, but let's talk about the EU. There is no really culture of, okay, let's talk about encryption, let's talk about access of law enforcement to communications, and this is an old topic, but for some reason was not discussed. So now we don't have this attack from media right now, so we are in a position to start discussion. But it's really amazing how, indeed, as you say, Jean-Philippe, there is no difference between what we discussed on PGP and what we discussed today in terms of fundamental principles, but it's a complete different scenario because 10 years ago it was abstract, and today things happen and things are real.
And it seems to me that we are discussing those issues each time some kind of scandal breaks out. You were speaking about Snowden, there was Echelon before that, there was the Clipper chip issue, etc., etc. So it seems that it is a topic which comes forth each time something big happens. Now, call me stubborn, gentlemen, but what I continue wondering is, are we discussing quantum technology here for the large accounts, or are we also discussing quantum technology for the individual user, for you and me, taking us outside our ICT-related profession? Do we know whether there is a market, there is a user, or there is a way to communicate quantum technology and the benefits of quantum technology to a user? We will have a panel later on tomorrow on artificial intelligence, and I mean, I don't want to create bridges where there are none, but you know the fears and the threats and the miscommunication and misinformation which is running on what artificial intelligence will do to our lives tomorrow. Is there anything the like with regard to quantum? Are we talking to the right user?
So I would be happy to jump in here, if I may.
Yes.
Okay, Bruno, you go first.
Yeah, 1 second to give you a glimmer of hope in terms of
fears and the threats and the miscommunication and misinformation which is running on what artificial...
In my... Okay, so just a very glimmer of hope in terms of international collaboration. As you said, it's not easy to collaborate internationally, but what we see is that the new post-quantum process, which is organized by NIST, is totally international in its organization. People from all around the world collaborate to try and define the new standard in crypto. And I think that's a really good point. I mean, it's not like, you know, a crazy scientist in one way defining some new algorithm which will then push to the others, maybe with the help of one government or another. I think it's a real international collaboration with everybody checking the work of the others in a quite, I think, and Joachim may know more about that, but quite an open manner. So I would say we are working in the right direction in terms of collaborating for improving our infrastructure. And Joachim, please.
Yeah, so I think we have to be careful not to mix topics too much. But when we talk about the threats, so the risk a quantum computer can bring to the wider community, which is the primary topic of the crisis at hand, there indeed we need to see how to tackle that. And in line with what Bruno said, the current approach on the standardization is very often open source. So usually things are open source and everyone can have a look at it and everyone will be able to see how this will be implemented. That's actually the most prominent approach going forward that should be pushed. And that's again for protecting against the threat, right? Now, I think there was also another question on quantum computing and how it will be made available maybe to end users and what relevance it will play to end users. That's more on the benefits, right? That's more the question. Will a quantum computer be able to solve certain problems that are relevant to certain users and also in the AI space for that matter? And the answer is most likely. I think the way I see the way going forward for quantum computing in terms of benefits, it will probably be made available via cloud services, as already done today by IBM and others. And probably we will be in a hybrid world for years to come. Meaning, as a user, you have certain problems you want to solve. At the end of the day, you don't care if the problem is solved quantum or classical. That should not be of your concern. There should be a service in the backend which takes care of that. And some problems will be solved with classical computing means, and some problems will be solved with quantum computing means, depending on the nature of the problem. And I think this will be most likely the model going forward for a while. So again, what I mentioned here was on the benefits, right? On the using quantum computing for benefits, right? And the last thing I wanted to say also to Jean-Christophe's remark, I think the struggle we have in these crypto war times, and again, the recent idea to try to intercept crypto implementations, that's a bit disconnected from this quantum threat, but that's more like if we, on one hand side, try to push open source solutions for future crypto, which should implement end-to-end encryption to users, then it is a struggle, of course, at the same time to implement on purpose backdoors into that, such that regulatory bodies or, I don't know, states can intercept into that communication for whatever reason they need to intercept that. So I think it's really difficult going forward to try to solve both at the same time, going in an open source new crypto schema and at the same time allowing or building backdoors into the implementations, which is at the end then going away from open source, because then you de facto need to allow others to intercept into your communication.
Yes, and when we look at, thank you for that, Joachim, and when we look at what is currently happening at the level of the European Union, building backdoors is to a certain extent a no-go, but there's an antinomy between, on the one side, getting access to a communication which would be end-to-end encrypted, and on the other side, backdoors. So a kind of kiosk or something like that seems to be completely off the table.
I think
I would just like to comment, let's say, on the previous remark on the quantum being available for let's say everyday users. I think we have to be cognizant of the fact that there has to be a balance on how much money or effort you put in the protecting something and how much what you're protecting is valuable. And you cannot protect obviously endless amount of money protecting something which is not worth that amount of money because it doesn't make sense commercially. And I think there will be a solution for everyone. I think what is the European Commission trying to do right now is actually to build a multi-layered approach in which there will be obviously more sophisticated, more, let's say, resilient solution being done for the quantum key distribution, for instance, either terrestrially or even through the space like we do in our Quad project, to distribute keys through the satellites, all the way down to the end users. Obviously, there will be not same technology or same level of technology available for everyone, but there will be general infrastructure to which Commission is putting money to develop as a part of the Euro QCI initiative or Euro QCI project. And what is important is to actually make sure that whoever uses that infrastructure doesn't have to bother with the technological hurdles in order to access that features. And I think this is something that would definitely play a big role on making sure that this is widely accepted, and wide acceptance is the prerequisite actually to make sure that we all collectively and individually stay protected from those attacks. And I think this is what the whole ecosystem that the European Commission is building currently today and trying to build in the next 5 to 10 years, and to which many of the panelists are part of, including SES with their satellite quantum key distribution, is contributing to. And I think this is to summarize, there's going to be a solution for everyone. It's going to be at different levels, and it's going to be, it has to be tuned to the value of the asset you want to protect.
I agree with you, Alan. It is going to be like always in the IT or ICT service layer. There's different layers of services with different price tags attached to it. There's one thing, obviously, which is clear, that is the basic layer needs to be an extremely secure layer, because otherwise people will turn away from the technology.
Absolutely. And I think that elements, we are ranging from the, let's say, easy access to the features, which might not give you like super ultimate security, to the probably extremely complex technological solution, which will give you like, ultimately, if you want a quantum security, if this is a term that we can use right now, which is basically the best what we know today, that it makes it unbreakable. That exists today. It's proven to exist, but as I said, like, it will be probably available different layers to different people, to different type of users.
Any reaction, Bruno, Joachim, on that?
In the future, I don't think you can restrict quantum technologies to quantum security. What we are doing now is to add a layer of security to our network, which is fine. But what we really want to aim at with, let's say, even this quantum communication infrastructure in the EU and further down the line, is to propose a quantum internet. And the quantum internet will not only give you security, it will probably be used for that as well. But the main thing is it will connect together different kind of computing, quantum computing machines, to do things we cannot even think today. I think we need to be very open-minded and say, okay, let's design this new network. Let's bring quantum to everywhere so that we can basically, the main idea is to be able to exchange qubits from any place to any place. These qubits will be used in different ways by different systems all around the world. And I think we can, this way, do things we cannot even think about today. So let's not restrict ourselves too much to quantum security, because we will probably miss the really important thing we will find out. Nobody would have thought about a quantum computer earlier. Actually, nobody would have thought about even internet 30 or 40 years ago, where everybody could connect to anybody and talk like that. Well, if you don't have any technical problems, obviously, it still happens once in a while. But even this was thought to be totally unexpected. And I would be very interesting to go back 20, 30 years ago to see if really what we are doing with the internet today is what we thought we would be doing. And I think that will be the same with the quantum internet, that we will probably use it in totally different ways. So not only security, but probably lots of other important things.
Joachim, a reaction to that?
Yeah, I fully concur. I fully agree with Bruno. I think we need to be open-minded to new technologies and to ways of giving access to users to this technology. And indeed, also, as Bruno said, we have to be careful not to get focused too much on crypto. Yes, it is a very important topic when we talk about quantum technologies. The benefits at hand are also those where, and that's very important, we expect in a couple of years already some real use cases. So again, just to give you the picture again, breaking crypto. So a quantum computer breaking crypto is something where, I mean, you could reasonably argue that it's maybe a decade ahead when this really happens, right? Again, I concur with Bruno here. You could argue that your data is at risk today already because someone could store the encrypted data and wait for the technology to arrive. But in a sense that this technology leap will probably take some time. But quantum computers for good things, to do other things maybe in space like AI, drug development, battery development, these are areas where we hope and think this will come in a couple of years already. So just to say, let's make sure we don't lose perspective on the opportunities indeed this technology will bring, hopefully to a wide user base, and certainly in certain industries in a few years already, right? And I think there I also agree with Bruno. We simply don't know how this will look like in 10 years or 5 years' time. We need to be open-minded and I guess see what works best for different users, right?
Jean-Christophe, from a communication and from a user side or from a regulatory side, where do you the future of quantum now outside the cryptosphere? Let's continue the lines of thinking of Bruno and of Joachim.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think what I fully concur with Joachim and Bruno. I think what is also very different today from 20 years ago is that if quantum is about to bring the same revolution as the internet did, well, 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, more precisely, our society was pretty much in silos. I mean, academic, researchers, technical people, regulators, law enforcement, military, there was no discussions. And so the internet was launched without any idea about security. And for the last 20 years, we have been struggling to, okay, how do we, manage what was not anticipated? And yes, today, Bruno, you're right, and Joachim, we should not put too much focus on crypto and security, and really we should embrace quantum because it's going to bring things that we don't think today. That's absolutely true. But I think the great news is that today we are discussing like this scenario today where we combine our line of thoughts. That was not happening 20 years ago, honestly. And this we don't know what's going to come with quantum, but we know that the way we try to address the problems we anticipate is something that we did not have in the past. So we should be, today it's confusion. Today there is a lot of argument, people argue on everything, but at least we discuss and we are in a much better position to anticipate the regulatory issues. So this is why I think it's very challenging, but we are in a much better position today, although we don't feel this way, much better position than we were 25 years ago.
Alan, you get the final word on that one.
Yeah, I think, the colleagues on the panel absolutely right. I mean, the quantum is definitely more than just encryption. I think I just want to give a word of caution here. Like, I think it was already mentioned by the colleagues here that, we built the internet like 20 years ago. We didn't think about security. Let's not repeat that mistake again. Let's not get overly enthusiastic about quantum computing, which I think everybody is getting enthusiastic for very good reasons. However, let's not keep the possible impacts and the threats of quantum computing on the security of the data and communication critical infrastructure behind, and let's try to, as we develop the quantum computing, let's try to develop the adequate means and systems to protect us at the time this is happening. And this has to be today and probably even before the quantum computing starts, to make sure that we don't end up with a situation with the internet, which we are catching up for the last 20 years to patch the security problems of the internet of today.
Okay, thank you. Gentlemen, any other insights still, or from any of you? No? Okay, well then, thank you very much. Apologies for the technical incidents, but thank you for having spent your time and given us very valuable insights into quantum and the opportunities. Let me close this panel with a personal thought. If Otto Lilienthal had thought about the risks of flying instead of the opportunities, he would probably have lived a longer life than what he did. So let's look at the opportunities and let's take the risks as they come along.